you've probably done. And well, you've done a lot of live stuff. You've had so much
Yeah.
fun over the years.
Yes.
And
We used to do Realities May Vary, Cody Goff and my old podcast on Restream. So we would go live on Restream and go and be on Facebook and everywhere else.
oh, so what was
YouTube.
that? What was that podcast? Or what was that live stream?
That was we did that for a few years. It was basically after we uh, left or were let go from WGN, people were asking, and so we just started doing it. And it was basically like the old show where we'd just talk about whatever and goof around. And so yeah, that was I don't know 2020 to
Oh, during the pandemic?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. And you did it live. So how do you like doing live in terms of digital? How do you like doing live compared to recorded podcasting?
I I treat everything like it's live. Our new podcast, Crafty Brewers, Tales Behind Craft Beer. Yes, shameless plug right on the mic there.
Yes.
Yes, well, listen, you got to
No, no
plug
problem. You're here
when
to
you're out of
plug.
work.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I treat it like it's live. We record it like it's live, and then Cody does all the editing. So to me, I treat everything like it's live, just because that's how I've always performed.
Mm.
And whether it was radio or podcast or whatever, we just do it live. And then like this podcast, Cody is more of a he's crafting the or just editing things, making it tighter, making it look more professional, sound more professional. And then I can do what I want, which is nice.
Okay, so tell me about the podcast. What is Crafty Brewers?
So Crafty Brewers, Tales Behind Craft Beer, grew out of a segment we used to do at that started on WGN when we were doing the overnight show and then the Sunday show, where once a month we would have two guys in the beer industry come in, John Carruthers from Revolution Brewing and Jesse Valenciana, who used to work for Goose Island. And they would come in and they would talk about all different kind of things, not plugging Rev or Goose. They would talk about adjuncts, which are things that are added to beers or different styles, or maybe it was, coming into summer, what are going to be some good summer beers. And then it kind of grew to interviewing other brewers because both Cody and myself, I personally can say I love beer. I've been drinking beer since
I
I
like beer.
was too young to drink beer. And I'm always amazed by what goes into brewing. It's a science, it's an art, it's magic, it's all of those things. And so I interviewed a lot of brewers on WGN. Then I started interviewing brewers while I was on WTMJ. And a couple of years ago, and Cody and I had always talked about, oh, we should make this into a podcast, but everybody's busy. Everybody's got things to do.
Mhm.
And then I decided, no, I'd really like to do this. So I approached a brewer that I knew and I asked her if she'd be interested in co hosting with me. She said yes. And I asked Cody just to meet with us to give us some pointers because professionally he deals in podcasting.
Yeah.
He's the head of content and podcasts at NerdWallet. And shout out to Cody Goff.
And he's also
Um,
very, very knowledgeable and successful in that space, as they say in corporate world.
Yes, he has moved up from company to company. He's won awards for his work at Discovery. The guy knows podcasting.
Yes.
And so when I asked him just to come and give us pointers, and I told him about the whole thing, and at that point he was like, "No, I'm producing this." I said, "Okay, so
Wow.
you're welcome to come along." We've worked together at this point for like 17 years. For those who don't know, I think even back when I first talked to you in 2011, well, first recorded talking to you, I did talk to you
Right.
before that, but um, Cody was my producer for years and years at WGN. Then we did the Realities May Vary podcast. I officiated his wedding, so I babysit for his kids. So we've known each other for a long time, and we're more than just colleagues. So when he said he wanted to produce this, I knew we were in good hands and we started it. And what we do is we talk to brewers because the tagline for the pitch was every pint tells a story because every brewer comes from a different place. Most of them did not start their lives wanting to be brewers. They've come from different backgrounds. There are some similarities, but a lot of differences and a lot of really, really interesting stories. So we've done about almost 50 episodes, and we've talked to big brewers like Revolution and Dovetail and Guinness Open Gate, to small brewers that people may not have heard about but are really good, like Bubble House and places like that. So, Brother Chimp, I'm just, I don't want to short shrift anybody, but if you look up Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer, you can see all of the places that we've been, all the people we've talked to, and we've got more in the offing.
Oh, because I read some article that said craft brewing is going down due to edibles, etc. Is
There's
that
a
true?
lot of change in the industry, and I don't presume to talk for the industry, but it is. Drinking habits have changed since the pandemic. Cannabis has changed the way consumers, especially in legalized states, consume beer and spirits. Uh, the introduction of seltzers and hop waters and all kinds of things have changed, but people are still drinking good beer. And yes, there's been a number of brewery closings. Some places just never were able to bounce back from the pandemic, and I know 5 years out, that seems like an odd thing to say, but it's still going. My former co-host, when we started this, was co-owner of a brewery, and that brewery closed a few months into the run of the show, and they moved. She and her husband, who was the brewer and the other co-owner, they moved out of state. So um, it's rough, but the places that are doing well are doing really well, and the places that were able to pivot during the pandemic and then keep pivoting after, because yes, younger generations are drinking less, but they long after the pandemic for community. So a lot of these tap rooms have developed into the old the old school neighborhood pub. They have trivia nights, and they have bands, and they have paint and pint nights, whatever it is, to get people to come in, build that sense of community. And that's how you develop regulars, especially in neighborhoods where it's a great place to gather. Most of them are kid friendly and dog friendly. So if you're a young parent, you can go on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. The kids can have something to do, and you can have a beer or two, and then go home, and everything's great. So the the thought that the beer industry is struggling is real. The thought that it's on the ropes is completely false.
Well, it sounds like you're describing families going out because when I look at younger people who are drinking age, of course,
Yep.
I thought they weren't going out as much
They weren't, and
and they're
now,
sitting
but
home and
now,
streaming or something.
that which is true. But the ones who do want to go out, there is a strong desire to go somewhere where they feel a connection. Whether it's, okay, my local brewery is big into sustainability. My local brewery recycles. Oh, my local brewery is dog friendly. So on a beautiful day, you know how the minute it gets above 55 in Chicago, people are out. People want to be outside.
Yeah.
So, oh, I can take my dog for a walk. I can stop at my neighborhood brewery, sit outside, have a beer, go home. I'm not investing the whole day. I don't have to go out and rage till late at night. I
Yeah.
can take my baby for a walk. We can sit in the beer garden or sit in the tap room. We can have a beer or two, see some people from the neighborhood that I know. Now I know the bartenders, I know the brewer, I know the owner, I know, I feel like I belong in this place. And that's kind of the stuff we highlight too, because all of these breweries, no matter how big or how small they are really getting involved in their communities, whether it's sponsoring things or holding, having nonprofit meetings there, or anything, because that's the key. That's what craft brewing started as, is building a community. And then it kind of it for a lot of places it didn't go away, but some places it did, and they forgot. But now everybody is really focused on that, which is great.
Well, it sounds like an updated version of back in the day when people went to the corner bar.
Yeah, that's
But,
exactly what it is.
but I mean, of course,
That's
back then
exactly
it
what
was
it is.
not exactly fluffy and cute. It was
No.
a
Well,
little
no, and you
different.
you know, it was a little smoke filled and dark, and that's it. But listen, there's nothing wrong with a dark, smoky bar, even though
Yeah.
you don't find smoky bars anymore. I spent a lot of time performing in dark, smoky bars and being in dark, smoky bars. So there's a place for all of it. But yeah, these craft breweries or local breweries, as some people call them, they are more welcoming. It doesn't, you're not going up to a place with blacked out windows and an old style sign and going, I don't know what's going to happen when I open this door. And there's three guys at the end of the bar hunched over a highball, and they look at the door like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
You know, craft breweries, you walk in, it's like, oh, okay, cool. There's a rack of board games. Let's sit down and play Jenga for a couple hours.
Yeah, because I did walk by one of those Budweiser type of places where it said it was open. I'm talking about, I think it was on Grand Avenue or something. And
Yeah.
I thought, I'm just tempted to open up the door because it said they open at 8 a.m. or something. But then I thought, what will I encounter? But
Probably third shifters who stop for a beer on the way home after work, they're just on a different schedule. So they need that bar that's open at 8 o'clock. There were bars that used to be closed for an hour a day, you know? So, and I guess if you're getting off work at 7 and you want to stop for a drink on your way home, you don't want the sun to be blaring in. So you go to one of these small corner
yeah.
taverns, and that's what you get.
Well, I used to work really early in radio, like extremely early. And then sometimes I would think, okay, I have a lot of time left. So I used to like to go to Corridor, which I still like, Corridor on
Yeah.
Southport.
Yep.
And they have such a great atmosphere. And it's the only place that plays actual vinyl and it's not mainstream music, it's obscure.
Nice. You might like Illuminated too, then. Illuminated is, they play all kinds of, obscure is a good adjective for the music and stuff they play there. And it is it's probably the most eclectic tap room I've been in as far as decoration and everything else. The beer is phenomenal, but the decor is like, this place is crazy in the
And then
best possible way.
another place that's really seems, as they say, bougie, but it's cool is Bitter Pops.
I haven't been there.
I mean, I don't know. I assume they do have beer on draft, but the beer is really good. And if you want to try this is in Roscoe Village, Lakeview area,
Okay.
but if you ever want to try it, they'll give you a little taste.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
just really like it there. And I do see parents with their kids there too.
it's nice. I remember taking our daughter, this was before craft brewer. We'd go to like Buffalo Wild Wings on a Monday night and just sit her car seat on top of the table while we all sat around drinking beer and eating wings. So listen, I think it's great if you can take your kids out a little bit and expose them to different things. That's fine. And I love all the brewers are real big on giving you that taster sample. There's a lot of people are new to beer or have only
Yeah.
drunk. They're very brand loyal. They've only drunk one kind of beer their whole life, and this way they go, oh, okay, I like this. I'll try this, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, and also be from the descriptions because it'll try to describe what the taste is, but then if you say to them, well, I want something like a little lighter, a little crisper, they'll say, oh, try this. It's sort
Yeah,
of like wine. I mean, I'm more into beer than wine, but it's like that wine concept.
and I think that's a very good analogy, and it started to get more like wine, which was a problem in some places
Yeah.
where beer, not the brewers so much, but the beer drinkers were becoming very snobby, like wine connoisseurs. And it's like, no, dude, beer is supposed to be for everybody, for the
Yeah.
common man. So, yes, you can be as experimental as you want, but let's remember what we're doing here. We're making a beer for everybody to drink and enjoy, not just for guys who are going to, you know, hold up their nose and go, oh, that doesn't meet the flavor profile. Shut up. It's good. Because there's stuff that I love that other people don't. And there's stuff that I just can't stand, styles that I'm like, ugh. And people swear by them. So a little something for everybody.
And also, I mean, that's really a long way to come from like ancient Egypt when they constantly drank beer.
Yeah.
If it was good enough for the people, building the pyramids, then, you know, then I'm
Yeah.
sure,
No, it's,
people know.
well, now all this talk, now I want a beer. I should have
And
brought
I
a
was
beer
gonna
with me.
I actually have some beer. I thought, gosh, should I have some beer? But then, nah, no day drinking for me. So
Yeah, no, I gotta, maintain some illusion of respectability.
yeah. So okay, so in addition to beer, you mentioned, do you still perform in these
Yeah, I
clubs?
still do stand up occasionally. I just did a show a couple weeks ago. So now it's to the point where I do it when friends of mine who've known me forever are doing shows and they call me and go, "Hey, you want to do this show?" I say, "Yeah, of course." So it's still fun to do, and I still get out there. And now that it's not my job, it's so much more fun because I could just go out with a different attitude, and the show's been really good and writing new stuff. And so that's always a lot of fun.
Well, when was it your job?
For 20 some years before I started at WGN, that was what I did. I was on the road full time. So I was a stand up before, well, I was in radio kind of before I was in stand up. And then, yeah, so it was when I started at WGN, I kind of pulled back on doing stand up because at that point there was, outside of FM morning shows, there was a stigma about being a comedian on the radio because some in management and some people thought, well, a comic can only make jokes. They can't talk about anything else. So I didn't mention very much that I was a stand up. And even when I would do gigs, I wouldn't promote them much.
Well, what was it like to do performing full time and be on the road?
Being on the road at first, at first it was great. It was, looking back, there were things I could have done differently, but it's a lot of freedom. You work for yourself and you can, I traveled all over the country. I saw a lot of great things, stayed in a lot of horrible places and a few really nice places, met a lot of different people, realized that if that funny works all over. Funny is funny whether I'm here in Chicago or whether I'm in Alabama or, out west, wherever I am. If you're funny and can connect with people, then it's going to work. And making that connection was I carried that connection or that relevant realization into radio. And when you connect with people, whether you're on stage or on the air, that's what people are drawn to, that connection, that personality.
Well, I did ask you this years ago, but do you still feel like what's it like to perform in front of people as opposed to on the radio? Because you can't see your audience on the radio, and the response might be delayed even if there's social media.
Yeah, it's I always counted on. I always worked with great producers. I was really lucky with not only the producers that were with me for long periods of time, but for even some of the people who would fill in for me because they they knew what I was about. And so I would always look to them. And if they were smiling or laughing, I was like, okay, then I'm sure other people are laughing. Now, sometimes they didn't at stuff that I knew was funny, so I just figured they were dumb. But it's a different thing, and you get used to it after a while, not getting that immediate response. It was like during COVID when I started doing shows from home rather than going up to the station because everything was locked down. It's a whole different thing to do the show in a room by yourself with, this is okay because I can see you. And when we did the other podcast, I could see Cody, and we're in person with Crafty Brewers. But sitting just looking at a computer screen took some getting used to. But then it became second nature, and I was like, oh, I never want to leave my house. I
Ooh,
love this commute. I love
yeah,
the show's over at 9. Oh, at 9:02, I'm home. It's beautiful.
yeah. But also you're talking about the funny, funny being anywhere, but doesn't it depend on the region and the crowd? Like, do you have to adjust?
Um, this listen, I know people listen to your podcast from all over the world. I don't want to throw shade at the South. The only difference I would do is I would talk slower, a little slower when I was in the South. Not slow like, oh my gosh, he had a head injury, but just slow down because I've always talked fast. And I realized it wasn't that they didn't like it. It was just they weren't quite getting it all. They were and not getting it by understanding it, just I was going too fast. And I always talked about universal kind of topics, whether it's relationships or family or things that I always figured if something happens to me, because I'm just a regular guy, there's a good chance it happened to either most people or at least a good chunk of other people that they could relate to it. So I didn't really have to change material. I would always start the show with a few minutes of local stuff that I discovered while I was in town. And it's an easy way to ingratiate yourself to an audience. I'm by no means the first person to think of that. So whatever happened to me as I was in El Paso or in Atlanta or wherever, I'd talk about that for a couple minutes and then get into other stuff. Um, and that was how it worked, just traveling around.
Well, you said you were talking about writing. How did you write? How did you go approach writing?
Uh, I would have an idea, and I was never a verbatim writer until recently, only because it didn't, it wouldn't translate. So I would make a couple notes and I basically wrote on stage. So I would have the topic, a couple bullet points, and then I would just talk it through. And thankfully, when I was younger, I had a really good memory. It maybe slipping a little bit now, but I would say, okay, I remember this beat worked and this beat worked. That didn't. So the next night or the next show, if it was a multi-show night, I would go up and I would try it again. And it was like, okay, this is going to end up being shorter than I thought it was going to be, but now everything works.
Hmm.
And now I'm at the point where, like, when I started doing stand up again, I wrote out all the stuff that I could remember. And I kind of do that now, um, where I'm writing out the full thing, but I never say it on stage like I've written it on the paper, because I don't know, it just doesn't work. And I have the gist, and I think after all this time, I'm I'm pretty good at making taking my idea and just presenting it in a humorous way rather than having to read it off a script. Because I've been
Who?
improvising my whole life. I've been improvising on the radio. I've been improvising on stage. So once I have the outline, it's and I don't before any people think I'm too full of myself. I don't like put myself on this level. But if you've heard oh man, Larry David talk about Curb Your Enthusiasm, there's an outline, and then they improvise the middle. That's kind of how I look at how I write my stand up. I have the outline, and then I just kind of freeform it. Now, if something works, I try to remember it, so I do it the same way the
Hmm.
next time. But if not, at least I'll get that same beat for the next time.
But I thought pros don't script it. I mean, I know they write stuff out, but I mean, when you said not reading it, like who is reading their jokes? I mean,
They're not reading it, but some joke
memorize.
writers write it like, again, I'm using big examples because people have heard these stories. I heard the same kind of interviews. Jerry Seinfeld writes out every word because he is meticulous about the wording for a joke. And if you've people who are familiar with Aaron Sorkin, not a comedy writer but a script writer, and he wants his words delivered exactly as he writes them. So there are comics who are joke writers whether it's one line or a couple bits, and they're very, very meticulous about each word and its meaning and its sound and its cadence. And I am more about the bigger the bigger picture. The is this story funny? And I don't mind if the words change a little bit. I know the punch words, the punch lines. I know what I'm going to get to. Um, but it's more of an evolution where I don't worry about each particular word. Maybe I should, but I don't. So that's the difference. They're not When I say reading a script, um, I just meant that they're when they write a joke, that's how that joke will be delivered. Just like when you write a book, that paragraph in that book is never changing. It works that way. It was perfected, and it's going to stay that way. And so I'm definitely not perfect. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do that. But you did mention memory, and this is what I realized is like people say, "Oh, I'm getting older, I don't have a good memory." But then I think, well, no, you have several years experience. So let's say well, anybody. I mean, like a 20-year-old doesn't have as much experience as a 60-year-old. So the 60-year-old has a lot of filing cabinets in their
Yeah,
mind. Plus, if they've raised kids, they got all their memories, and then they've got to juggle everything. So when somebody cannot remember a fact or something, it's because it's hidden behind hundreds of other facts.
that's true. My head is filled with so much useless and some useful information. Sometimes it just takes me a minute to walk to the other room and pull out the file that I need. But
Right.
the experience part does play in, and it plays in on stage. It plays in on the radio, definitely. My old co-host at WTMJ was younger than me by about half, let's say. And she was amazed that I had done all the different things that I've done, and just weird stories. And I was like, you don't know the half of them. But anytime I would bring something up, and our producer was in her 20s, and she was like, "What? How could you? What? How did that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I've lived a life, I guess."
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, unfortunately, people don't always respect that. They think, if you're not new and using whatever current thing, you're not respectable, which I think is very shallow. And also, the tools change throughout time.
I agree with that. I do think it's incumbent upon like I may not know how to use all the technology, but I've exposed myself to it. So I don't want to be viewed as a Luddite or out of
Yes.
touch. So I know what things are. I also know where my audience is. So maybe that channel it doesn't really I don't need to be on that channel because that's not where the people who listen to me or watch me, that's not where they live. But I do know about it. And for example, with Crafty Brewers, we started out, we were just going to be audio. Then, because of Cody's expertise, he was like, no, we've got to be on YouTube. Okay. So what do we need to do to be on YouTube? And and I'll handle the Instagram and I'll handle this. And then he was like, okay, we've got to be on TikTok to get the conversion to YouTube. Okay. So now he handles a lot of it, but I also am studying it so that I know how to do that stuff too. So it's easy to fall into the trap, I think, for some people to say, oh, I've always done it this way. This is how I'm going to keep doing it, which is the most dangerous and infuriating thing, especially if you're someone who wants to try new ideas, knowing that some of those new ideas are going to fall flat, but that's part of the adventure. To just say, I'm not going to learn this. I don't need to know this. I can keep going the same way. I didn't know about Restream, which is what you're on now, till we started that other thing, and I was like, all right, I figured it out, and we were live. So while yes, there is an age bias, and you can remain relevant and you can remain current just by making an effort.
Well, also, like I said, the tools change because there are people who
Yes.
are crushing certain tools right now. But then in 5 years, if they don't see what's on the horizon, then they'll be passe. So you just always have to see what's
Yeah.
on the horizon and where your
Yeah.
audience is.
And you've got to, you can't chase every new bright shiny new thing because you you might not need it. You might. I've been delving into in the last few weeks. I've been delving into AI more than I ever did before with resume help and things like that, and just going, oh, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
And yes, I do fear our robot overlords for a lot of things, but they can help a little bit. And if I think using that technology as a tool that it was meant for is phenomenal. And you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't figure it out.
But we should ask Data from Star Trek what he really thinks about the AI. I think he should do a little webinar, don't you think?
So yeah, now you're getting into Cody's world with the Star Wars and Star Trek and the sci-fi. I know who Data is though. LeVar
Yeah.
Burton, correct? Yes.
Yes. So
See,
tell us
I'm
about your
oh, I'm done.
so tell us about your YouTube. What is on your YouTube?
The YouTube, well, mine, I don't know what's on there. The
What
Crafty
about your
Brewers YouTube.
podcast? Yeah.
The podcast is up, Crafty Brewers pod on YouTube. You can go there. You can see all the episodes. Now we've got trailers up there. We've got shorts because the kids love YouTube shorts, Margaret. That's what I was told.
Yeah.
So we put those up there. There's a lot of stuff on there. On the other one, on my personal one, you could see different things. But the Crafty Brewers one, we're updating. We publish every other week, and there's in between there's trailers and shorts, and so it's good. And you can see even if you're not a quote unquote beer person, which I get, a lot of people are not. What we've heard back so far from, we get a lot of brewers who listen and watch. We get a lot of people who love beer who listen and watch, but then we get a lot of people who aren't really into beer, self-identifying that way. We're not really into beer, but we like the conversations because uh, I've been interviewing people for a long time, and I'm genuinely interested in this topic. So my interest comes out, and the brewers sense that, and they see that we've done our prep, and I'm asking good questions, and so they get very comfortable, and it's really an entertaining conversation whether you've ever had a Grodzisky style beer or not. You go, oh, because there's stuff that I learn of on the podcast. I mean, I've found out about it during my research, and then I'm able to learn about it on the show. And so if I'm learning stuff, and I've been drinking beer for a long time, other people are learning about it. Plus, they're talking to these men and women who are part artist, part mad scientist, and it's always a good conversation.
What is your
So
prep?
my prep is
Beer drinking.
no, not so much the
Oh.
drinking. I because I don't we don't like, we have a beer during the show, just because obviously we're at a brewery, we want to showcase that.
Oh, so you do,
I
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you do all your recordings at the brewery itself?
Yes. Yeah, we go to each we started brewing at my old co-host brewery, and the brewers would come to us, and then when they left, or she left and moved to Florida, we started going to the brewers places, which puts the brewers in a much more comfortable environment, so they're free to do it. My prep is exactly like I'd prep for a guest on the radio show. I do find out everything I can about them. I'm looking for interesting nuggets or something that, every brewery has one or two things that set them apart from everybody else. Almost all the brewers have one or two things that I find I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And you know this, you've interviewed people for years. You want to find those few nuggets that you can pull out. And then that makes it easier and a lot of times, just like on the air, I have a list of questions. I usually don't get to most of those questions because, as any good interviewer knows, and you're one of those, you're listening, you're actively listening, so there's follow-up questions, or there's something you go, hold on, could you explain that for people who don't know? And I get a lot of that, where I'm like, hold on, what does that scientific term mean for those of us
Yeah.
who are not brewers? And so it's just, the prep is just being ready. And it's my biggest driver with prep, whether it's on Crafty Brewers or whether it's on the radio, is to not look stupid. So I don't need to be the expert. That's why I'm talking to you. You're the expert. I'm the guy who has to ask good questions. And I'm the guy who has to not come in and make mistakes going, oh, so you brew this. And no, that's another
Right.
brewery altogether. So
Like Jiminy Glick.
yes, I am not Jiminy Glick. I am not Zach between two ferns. I'm not Chris Farley interviewing people. I never said, remember that time you tried to brew a beer and it was bad? So I'm, it's, it's like anything. If you're prepared, you can make it look easy. And that's the secret. People go, oh, how do you do that? It seems, you make it look easy. Well, behind the scenes, it's that old adage about the duck. Behind the scenes, my feet are really kicking. But because I've done all that kicking, then I can look calm and have fun and be in, here's an improv term, an acting term, be in the moment. And
Yeah.
you can punch me at any time if you see me for using that term. But it does make it easier if we're not like, oh, what am I going to ask next? And you're just going, I know all this stuff. I can follow up with them. So boy, I give long answers. I
Well, that's
really,
good.
it's almost like I talk for a living.
No,
This is
you're supposed to give a lot of answers. That's the whole point. Because if somebody
that's
doesn't, then I'm in trouble because then I have to fill. So
oh, that's I say that to the Brewers if they go, "Oh, did we talk too much?" I go, "No,
that's the
I want
point.
to ask a question to get out of the way." You're, you know,
Yeah.
no, you go ahead and talk.
Because on one of the rare occasion that I was interviewed with Chris Bass, my gosh, I was going on and on and on and on. And I said, wait, I'm talking too much. He's like, no, that's the point. And same with John Suntress. So,
Yeah, I
so
just
yeah.
get sick of my own voice, to be honest.
Well, another thing is you mentioned questions. What do you consider good questions when you talk to somebody?
Uh, if it's if it's a question that they haven't heard a million times, if it's something that I've found that I find really interesting, a little nugget, just a little fact, that I can then say, oh, this is, or I can surprise them with how'd you know that? Um, those are what I consider good questions. There's the basic background questions and some of those things. We end each show with the same four questions for each brewer. So those are easy, but it's the stuff in the middle, um, because that's when they're going to really open up and they're more comfortable and they because they see that I've done some research and I've asked something that they haven't, oh, how'd you get into brewing? Okay, everybody's asked them that. So let's find a different way to ask that question using something else that I discovered while I was researching them.
Well, that's true because also some of those questions, like how'd you get into brewing? Da da da. It's been answered again and again. People can just do a Google search, so you
Right,
can ask something a
exactly.
little different angle.
Yeah, it's trying to keep um, everybody interested, from myself to the brewer to the audience. Let's find some different things and let's have a good time. And that's where all my comedy and radio background come in. That it is while we're doing an interview, and yes, I'm asking you questions and you're answering them, and that for a lot of people is uncomfortable. We also have some fun and we laugh and we're having a good time. And brewers are passionate because this is what they do for a living, and so they're happy to talk about it if you give them the opportunity.
Now you
Just
were
like
talking,
most guests on the radio, they're happy to talk to you if you make them feel comfortable.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get on a radio show now because so many of them are not local, and a lot of them are
Right.
political. So you have to do something very extreme to get on those other ones.
You're
But
telling me.
now what? So you were at, I met you at WGN. You were there for a long time, and okay, because
Right.
you said you were there for several years. So what did you do there, et cetera? Even though we talked about this 13 years ago.
Yeah, I started out doing co-hosting Saturday night into Sunday morning, 2 to 5 a.m. And I started there. And then my co-host left after 6 months. And I stayed on that show. And then I started doing overnights on Friday too. So I would do Friday. I followed Nick D. And on Saturday, I followed Nick D. And so 2 to 5 or 1 to 5, whatever. Then I started filling in at different places. I had a few years where I was co hosting Sports Night from 7 to 10, right before Milt Rosenberg would come on. Um, and then we moved, we left Tribune Tower. And at the new place, I was doing Sunday evenings and fill ins and all of that. And then one day, it was over. And
Oh, sorry to interrupt you as you're coming to the cliff, but Scott Childers said, big fan of Brian on the air for quite a while. The podcast is great from a craft beer lover perspective. Informed questions lead to great answers. And then Tom
oh,
Appel, who's a car expert who's really good on the
yeah,
air, he
yeah.
said, Brian's hilarious.
Oh, well, thank you, fellas. That's very nice. I appreciate that. Yeah, Scott's a longtime radio voice in Chicago too, and I've
Yeah.
talked to Tom many times on the air. So I'm glad. I'm glad. Thank you for the nice words about the podcast, Scott. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I'm sure
That's
it's good.
great.
And so now
So yeah,
let's get back to the cliff. So then something
the
happened.
cliff. I don't. Yeah, it's still we were. We were fired for all intents and purposes, but we were never told we were fired. We were told they were um, going to start airing out of market football games on Sunday.
Okay.
And but don't worry, you and Cody are still part of the family, and we love you, and we want so we'll use you, and that was it. So um, in the meantime, I had also been doing stuff at WTMJ. So
And where's that
I
for
was
people who
doing
don't know?
that is in Milwaukee. It's another Heritage AM station. It's for Chicago people. It used to be the similar to WGN in its programming. Um, they did have a conservative political lean based on two really big and really successful personalities that were there for a long time, Charlie Sykes and Jeff Wagner. News coverage. They carried the Brewers and the Bucks for a long time. We carried the Green Bay Packers, and so our the old general manager at WGN, Tom Langmeyer, brought me up to, and I did Saturday afternoons at WTMJ, and it was the same kind of show that I did at GN, general interest stuff. We had guests, all of that, and I started doing some fill-in work there, and then
Well,
after, yeah,
well, sorry, you filled in on the conservative shows or what?
I was able to. They no, I didn't fill in on. I never got to fill in on Charlie Sykes' show because I was not. Um,
Informed
that
in
was
that
a
way.
certain kind of host.
Right.
I was, and I never used to be. I never used to talk about politics at all. I filled in on Jeff Wagner's show because I could do more general interest stuff. And I was always, I was always reading and keeping up on what was going on in Milwaukee. So I was able to fill in for Jeff. And after a couple of years, I left because I was doing a play. So
Hmm.
I didn't want to drive. I couldn't drive up there on the weekends anymore on Saturdays. And this was before people were doing shows from home. So I stopped. And then in 2020, late 2019, I started back doing fill-ins on WTMJ, which then led to a full-time role over the last year that ended just a couple weeks ago because there was a format change that brought me into the full-time opportunity because I was doing nights, which was a
That's hard.
full-time show, but it was preempted like the old days of sports night at GM. We were preempted by Brewers and Bucks games. So it was I was the night host, but I was on, half the time just because of sports, which was fine because that show was very reminiscent of the old show because what I had my theory was, and it was shared by the management at the time, people had been listening to politics and hard news and stuff all day. So from 6 to 9, we would, yes, we would still talk about the big stories. And we covered a lot of breaking news as, we did here in Chicago. But there was also a lot of fun. And I was very fortunate there to work with a number of producers who, um, one, Tommy Wirtz, I was always getting texts and messages that he reminded people of Cody, and our chemistry was, you know, after Cody, Tommy's the best guy you've ever worked with, and blah blah blah. But I had other good guys that I worked with at WTMJ, and a couple, and some good women too. I shouldn't forget the ladies who produced for me at WTMJ as well. So and now a new format change is why I'm no longer there. They've changed the focus to except for 1 2 hour new politics show, it's all news.
Hmm.
So news and sports. So
And Tommy Wirtz, is that of the Wirtz family?
no,
Okay.
unfortunately, I wish it was because I'd borrow some money from him, but no, he
Okay.
is not. He is not connected to the Wirtzes of the Blackhawks fame.
Now, what about the play that you were in? You sort of skimmed over that.
I was in Tony and Tina's wedding for a couple of years. I played Vinny Black. I was the venue owner, and it revived my love of stand up because in the middle of the play or the reception, Vinny Black had to do a few minutes of stand up because Vinny aspired to be a Vegas nightclub comic. So it wasn't my material. It was old jokes, a lot of really cancelable ethnic jokes, Polish jokes, Irish jokes, Italian jokes, jokes about my wife. in the, Henny Youngman kind of thing, and audience interaction, which the whole cast, it's an interactive play for those who haven't seen it. You're a guest at the reception and you eat, and and all the characters are walking around talking to you. But Vinny kind of MCs the whole deal. And so I did that for a couple of years, and then the show closed. Or I no, it was still going when I left, um, but then it closed a little while after that. But it was a lot of fun. It was great to be back doing something like that. It was great to be doing even a few minutes of old jokes to kind of get timing back and stuff. So that was a lot. It was a lot of fun, and I worked with a lot of great people, and it was a terrific experience.
How did you score that?
I got an audition. I went. My agent called, and they said, "You want to go in and audition for a play?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to audition for a play." Um, and so I went in, and it was all improvisation. And I did a scene for uh, one of the other characters, the father of the groom, and then the director was like, "I want you to do." He had already cast the mother of the bride, who is this brash character, who's very loud, and the woman who was playing her was fantastic, but she was also a powerhouse. And the director was like, "I want you to do a scene with her as Vinny and see if you can hold your own." And I did, and they offered me the part that day.
Oh my gosh. That must
Yeah.
be first of all, I saw the play many years or whatever production when it started. It started several years ago.
Oh, it went. Actually, our director, Paul Stroley, had played Vinny in the original Chicago production that started. They used to run it at Second City back when it first opened back years ago. So our director was the original Vinny. So for him to give me the blessing to play Vinny was kind of cool.
That is so cool. That's like some Hollywood right here in the Midwest.
Oh, it was. Oh, yes, I'm very. There is a lot of production here. I mean, it's been. That's how I got on Chicago Med, and all different kind of stuff just from things being here.
Well, speaking of Hollywood, what's
Ha.
up with an agent? Like, how'd you get an agent? Is it good having an agent? Do you
Oh,
go out to lunch with your agent?
no. This
Do
listen.
you tell people talk
I
to my
have.
agent?
I wish I had that kind of power. I still have an agent. I haven't talked to them probably in a couple of years. Just and it's like, okay, I haven't pushed it because I've been doing other stuff. Getting an agent, getting an agent is, I don't know if it's easy. It was easy when I got an agent, and then I went exclusive with that agent, and that was fine. And when I went to LA, I had a number of different agents. And a lot of agents. Are they good agents who can get you stuff? Not always. Which was, my agent here was really good, but it's still you. It's a hard thing. I don't understand how a lot of the submission, they supposedly submit you, and then it comes down to the casting director, who will do a quick look at your headshot and your resume and either decide, yeah, bring them in or don't bring them in. Um, and it's a great business when you book something. 99.5% of the time, it's a horrible business because you have no idea why you didn't get something, why you did get something. There's stuff I've gotten where I was like, oh, I didn't think I was even close on that. And then stuff where I was like, I nailed it. This is gonna be the break. And nothing. Or the worst part, and any actor will tell you this, there's a thing called avails. So you go and you audition, and then usually you do a callback, and by then they've winnowed it down to just a certain number. And then if you're the next step is to be put on avails. Well, they'll call you and they say, okay, don't book anything for this day and this day. So technically at that point, they've hired you. But little do you know, they've also put two other people on avails or another person on avails. So now instead of being hired, you're like in the final two. And then that's the only time I would get excited. I'm like, oh, I'm on avails. This is going to be great. It's a recurring part. Oh, and then your agent calls. you've been released. Oh no, really? That's horrible.
How much
Yeah,
time
so I've
passes?
sometimes they never even call you until you're released. And I'm like, I would call them on that day and go, hey, I was supposed to start shooting today. What's going on? Oh yeah, they released you. Why didn't you call me? Oh yeah, we forgot. Okay. So it's just par for the course. There's nothing, my story is not unlike 99% of other people who are pursuing that kind of stuff. Just like the radio stories. Everybody would like to think, "Oh, I'm so special because I got let go." Well, we all get let go at some point. And today a friend of mine who used to produce at WGN and has had a long career at another station here in town was let go. Because that's and sometimes you just don't know why, but that's the way it goes.
Well, okay, I guess we'll discuss that later. But so, well, one thing you're mentioning about the entertainment business or radio or whatever is the incredible insecurity it causes. Do you know anybody who's been solid despite the ups and downs?
There's people who I think can fake it very well. Um, I don't know how you could be in a business that is it's very narcissistic because you have to believe that what you have to say is important enough for people to listen to, that perhaps your opinions can sway somebody else's opinion. So there's a personality type that does really well. And I think like that personality type for me comes out when I'm on the air and only when I'm on the air. So but yes, I don't know anybody who's not secretly insecure. You can fake it and you can be confident and you can be confident about your abilities and still be insecure about your job because the history of the industry pretty much shows that most of the time there will come a point where you will be let go. And it doesn't matter how good you're doing. I always think of Gary Meyer as an example. A legend in Chicago radio, top biller at the station, number one ratings. They still let him go. It's like, well, if they can let Gary go, they can let anybody go. Because if you're doing if you're doing everything you think you're supposed to do, then that's all you can do. It's something I've learned in therapy, Margaret. You can control the effort, not the outcome. So yeah, I always figured I was going to get let go someday, but I didn't let that affect how I did the shows or how when I would talk to my bosses at either place and say, okay, what do you think needs to be done to tweak things or make things better or how are things going? You know, um, when in the back of your mind, you go, I know I could do it all. Right. And if a new owner comes in or a format change or whatever, that's how it goes. But we all know it. That's the life that we've chosen. So yeah, I think everybody's a little insecure, no matter how long you've been doing it. Um, but if you don't let it affect what you do on the air, then that's fine.
Well, you keep your eye on the ball like the pro athletes do.
Yeah,
I mean, they may have a rough
right.
day or something, and then they go out there and they just play to win.
Yeah, you've got every show's a new chance. Every break is a new chance. So you just go in and you come prepared and you come ready, and um, that's the key. All the best people are prepared. It doesn't matter whether you're in a music format or a talk format or a news person. If you do the work and you present well, that's all you can control. You know,
Well, it's
and
also
so
people are
that's
also let go for finances because some people who were
sure.
let go, and I won't name any names, they made too much money for what the station was paying
Yeah.
at one
There were a
point.
lot
So,
of that was a big thing before, those big salaries are a thing of the past, I think. But yeah, you're right. There's all kinds of reasons people get let go. So it's, that's just that's part of the game. And the longer, like, listen, I'm not complaining. I've had runs at two major heritage stations. So do I still have some shows in me? Of course, yeah, sure, I do. But will I get my shows out in different ways if no other radio options come? Sure, but I'm I I only toiled in obscurity at a small station for a little bit, and then I got to go to two powerhouses and have nice runs at both, and that's something I'll cherish forever.
Well, I've told in obscurity for like 20 years, so maybe my break will come, but that's my little tagline
Yeah.
is toiling in obscurity since 2009 or 2000 whatever, whenever I began my blog. But
Well,
um
yeah, I basically was obscure, but I was on high pro I was the obscure part of high profile stations.
right.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah. But yeah, it was good. One thing though is that one way to succeed though, I think, is if you have somebody on a higher section of the business and they give you a break. Like you said, you went to TMJ because somebody saw
Right.
that you were talented and they brought you there. Or if you have a really good agent and they find you the opportunity and then you go in with this really good deal. Because I notice some people who have agents, they're sort of protected by certain things. And if they are let go, they're paid a lot of money because they still have their contract left.
Yeah, I never had a contract anywhere. Contracts are very I think few and far between anymore. Usually with radio, you're hired at will, and that means you can leave or they can fire you for any reason. And you know, some high profile people still do get that contract payout, which is nice when they're basically paying you to leave. Sometimes, very rarely, the people get some severance, but most times it's just like, see ya. Thanks for your time, and you never get to really say goodbye to your listeners. You're just because they think, I don't know. I guess most businesses you don't get to go back and say goodbye to your clients and things like that. So it's just like, okay, you're done, and you're done, and you move on to the next thing, and then you are either on the beach, as they like to say in radio, or you find your next thing, or you change your focus a little bit.
Well, you were
And
saying that
now
you had a,
there's
I'm sorry, what?
no, now there's so many different ways for people to get their creativity out, and to if they want to do a podcast, or they want to do anything on the internet, YouTube, there's ways to keep yourself out there, because there are people who do, like, I'm still always surprised when people come up, and it happened 2 weeks ago when I was doing a stand-up show at a small club, and a guy came up and he said he used to listen to me in the overnights and Cody when he was working as a security guard, and he's like, you helped me make it through all the overnight hours, and I was like, oh well, it and that's not me patting myself on the back. It's just like, oh my gosh, that's really nice. So there are people who still want to listen to you, if maybe you're not on the platform you were before, but they may come to the new platform and listen to you there.
That's true. Yeah, because there are people too who I got to say like Steve and Johnny, because I used to do, like procrastinate on certain work, and so I'd be up really late to listen to them. Rick Hogan, I'd listen at certain points.
Yep.
I listened to him consistently because I met him in person many years ago, and I told him, yeah, I
Sure.
listen to your show like every week because I have to drive somewhere, and he's like, you listen? I'm like, yeah. And then there's certain people. And then also another person, a big person, whose big part is David Rowe, who used to be on overnight on WBBM. And I met
Okay.
him and I said, you got me through so many nights because I had to drive all over and it was his voice. I felt like his voice really connected with the listener, even though he was just
Yeah.
doing news.
Right. Well,
So,
that's why people are loyal to certain channels or stations for their news, because the person delivering it is someone that they feel comfortable with, they feel they can trust. And that goes for whatever you're putting out there. If people connect with it and have a strong attachment to you, and sometimes it's that they don't like you, but you get them so riled up they have to listen. Um,
right.
you could do that. And I've I've had a number of those, as has everybody who's ever been on the air. You get the people who are like, "Oh, you're stupid, you blah blah blah," and I'm like, "But you texted at the beginning, during the middle, and you're texting
Right.
now at the end of the show. So you've been listening for hours."
Yeah, that's true.
So what does that say about you that you you hate something so much, but you can't quit me?
Well, then also another thing I was looking here, but another thing that I wanted to ask you about was you're talking about your type, like you have a kind of type on the air. And what is that type? And then do you have the same, also, do you have a certain kind of type when you do podcasting?
Well, yeah, because my type is basically me.
Okay.
I don't put on airs. I don't pretend that I'm the smartest guy in the room. I have opinions, and I'm not afraid to state those opinions. But I think my type is I'm the kind of guy that you would talk to as your neighbor, or the kind of guy you would sit next to somewhere, whether it's at a game or at a bar or a brewery, and you could have a conversation. And I know a little about a lot of different things. I'm not a know-it-all on anything, but I'm honest about that part. I What I don't know, I find out. What if somebody corrects me? I'm not afraid to, like, I've had listeners correct me on stuff before, and some people I know never want that. They always want to seem like they know everything.
Mhm.
But none of us know everything. So what are you trying to project? I'm projecting a regular guy. I'm a regular working class guy who's happy. People, oh, you sound so excited because I was working my dream jobs. Even when I'm
Yeah.
interviewing these brewers, this is great.
Yeah.
I'm not, when I sound happy, it's not a put on. It's because I'm genuinely happy and I'm genuinely excited and curious. So my type is just a regular guy. I'm a married guy. I'm a dad. I have dogs. I'm as frustrated with stuff as you are. We both are driving on the Eisenhower and it sucks. We're both doing this. I'm upset about whatever. So I guess that's my type, and it's easy because I don't have to manufacture it. You know, um, the one thing with all the people I grew up admiring on the radio. And that's not to say that it's not me exaggerated a little bit for, for being on the air, but it's the ability to be genuine. And everybody I grew up listening to, at least whether it was an act or not, if it was an act, they were really good
Mhm.
at making themselves seem genuine and relatable. And that's so long answer to a short question. That's my type.
Well, yeah, because I met some people and they seemed friendly on the air.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met them in real life. And I'm like, oh, they were horrible. I mean, they were so, and it's not that they were busy. They just did not seem to like people. And also, I wasn't like wearing, bikini or something. So they probably didn't want to talk to me anyway. And it's just disheartening. And some of these people I even worked in the same company with.
I
I can't
think that
listen to
goes
them. It's hard for
back
me to
to
listen to them again.
that makes sense. And it also goes back to what you were mentioning before, that insecurity. I'm really good in front of a crowd or behind a microphone. I am horrible at making small talk. I I I don't I don't mingle well
Hmm.
except with people that I'm really comfortable with, because I'm always thinking, well, my sense of humor sometimes is a little twisted.
Hmm.
And the people who know me know that, and it's okay.
Okay.
But I don't want to offend anybody, and I don't want to feel like I'm being judged. So I think some people in the business are just jerks. We can be honest here, can't we? Can we talk plain truth? Some are asshats. I don't know if I could say that. You can edit it out later. But some really are. But some are just insecure.
Awkward, you mean? You mean awkward?
Yeah, a little awkward. And maybe just like I always feel I've talked, I just finished a show where I talked for 3 hours. Now, on the flip side, if somebody comes up to me and they're a coworker or they're a listener, I may not get into a 20-minute conversation with them, but I'm going to be polite because that, again, that's my type. I try to make people happy. I want to, I am appreciative when listeners come up and say stuff. It's so even if I don't have a long conversation, I'm at least going to give them the time of day to thank them for saying that, and what it means to me or whatever. So, but I think a lot of it is insecurity and just, and they're the people who do believe that they're better than, just because you're on the air doesn't make you better than anybody else. You got to go to work too. You just have, listen, uh, it's an easy job.
I think it's
We're
very
not,
hard. I think doing talk is incredibly hard.
it takes prep, but it's not like roofing is hard.
That's true.
Laying blacktop is hard.
Yeah.
Teaching kids is hard.
Mhm.
This is flexing a muscle continuously that you know how to flex. And once you get the formula down on this is what I have to do to prepare for a guest. These are the stories that I know from all my years of experience that are interesting. These are the ones people are talking about. We sit in an air conditioned room. Uh, you know, somebody behind on the other side of the glass is telling us when to stop talking and pushing the buttons so we don't have to. It's it's a difficult job. Everybody can't do it, but it's not hard work. So if somebody who's driving a bus and listens to the show, or is an overnight security guard, to go back to my last little anecdote, and they want to tell me how much they like listening to the show, kind of person would I be to go, yeah, whatever. Really? That's okay. That's because Margaret, I don't know if you've gotten this. I am a wonderful human being.
Well, I
That's
wouldn't be
what I want
talking
to
to you
get
if
at.
you weren't. I mean, no,
That's
because
what I
I
want to
liked you a
get out
lot.
there.
No, I mean, you're all self-deprecating, but yeah, because when I met you a long time ago, yeah, you're very friendly, and I had such good memories. Like those, I know that there were controversial things happening at WGN a long time ago, but for me, as somebody who's toiling in obscurity and who is still, especially back then, I felt like I had so much freedom to pursue stuff, my own projects.
Oh,
So, oh my gosh, so
man,
fun.
I tell you what, I talk with Cody about this all the time. The fact that we did at some days 6 hours overnight
Wow.
with no commercials and only a little bit of news with no management oversight.
Mm.
None. We did stuff that was great that people still bring up to me. We did stuff that was horrible that should have never been on any radio station, let alone WGN in Chicago. But we built an audience. We got much better at what we both did. And it became, for some people, third shift workers and entertainers who were driving home, it became a destination
Yeah.
because we brought an energy that you didn't hear in the overnight on a lot of places. We weren't talking to aliens or about aliens. We weren't, God bless the sports guys, but we weren't talking sports nonstop. And it was, it was great to
Yeah.
just have that freedom, and to have that freedom in a major market. I can't believe it. I mean, it doesn't happen anymore.
So,
So we were really lucky.
so what years were you doing overnight at
Oh
GN?
my gosh. Uh, what years did we do overnights? I was there for 14 years, it's like 2006 to 2019,
Wow, that is so.
2005 to 2019.
And you were on the air every night for that long.
No, it was there were some, there was the few years where it was sports night, but then I would still do overnights on the weekends. Then there was time where it was just weekend overnights and a fill in here, fill ins. I was consistently there, but I wasn't on every night. But the weekends were the weekends lasted ooh, a long time,
That's what I'm asking about. So
almost till
you
the
were
end.
on, your overnight was on the weekends. Okay. And you said you did that for several
Yes,
years.
we did over 10. Yeah,
Okay.
it was and uh, it was rough. I mean, Cody left at one point. He just bailed.
Yeah.
But then he came back, and it like I look at Steve and Johnny, who did overnights, and you mentioned them earlier, who did overnights full time, Monday through Friday, for or Sunday through Thursday, because they would come in over the overnight shift Sunday into Monday. So Sunday night through Thursday night for, I don't know, 25 years or something. And thankfully, they were doing it together because that overnight shift, whether you work overnight on radio or overnight at a steel mill, it it messes you up.
Yeah.
Overnight shift is rough, and doing it. I don't think doing it 5 nights a week makes it easier than doing it 2 nights a week because the 2 nights is like, oh, now I got to go back and work during the day for the other 5 days,
Mhm.
and then Friday afternoon come home try to take a nap, and that's why I always tease him about this. One of our great friends and my newsman Roger Badish was a teacher full time, and he would do the news overnight,
Mm.
and
And he'd play
more than
golf
once.
too. He'd get off the air and play golf.
Oh, he was doing all kinds of stuff. He was also sleeping on the air, which was great because I still tease him to this day about the time I wasn't. Last time I talked to you, for those who weren't around 11 years ago, we were in the old Studio A at
13 years
WGN
ago. Yeah.
13 years ago at in the Tribune Tower, so on the first floor. Well, in that studio, I would sit in the seat where Steve and Johnny did their show. And I would do my show, and the newsroom was off to my right. And there's a big window there. Well, this night I was paying attention to something else as I'm leading up to the news, and I'm getting ready. Oh, I'm going to hit it right on time, which is very exciting. The tone, you remember the old WGN tone at the top of the hour. The tone comes, and now with WGN News, here's Roger Badish.
Oh, God.
And I turn my head, and I'm like, here's Roger Badish. He was sound asleep. And so I start laughing. Cody starts laughing. We're like, Roger. And he got up and he was so discombobulated. He reached and he put his sunglasses on, and then he couldn't read his script because he had his sunglasses on. It was just, it was crazy. But that was the kind of, you know, God forbid you do that in, afternoon drive.
Mhm.
But overnight, everybody, it just turned into a bit, and everybody had fun. And Roger then did the news, and we laughed about it for the rest of the night. It was, it
That's
was
good.
fun.
No, that's good because with other people, and I have experience, but I won't say specifics, if there was one tiny issue, like so minor and no dead air, just on one slip, there are people who seriously yell and scream and bully, and it's a nightmare. And the fact that you didn't do that,
Well, it's a different kind of thing. Like I know the short time that WGN had Jonathan Brandmeier, who to me is one of the best in the game,
hmm,
no doubt about it. But his show is
tight.
perfect,
It's tight.
very, very tight, and he expects that, and he's earned it, and he works very hard on it, or he worked very hard on it. But I still like, for me, even now, even up to the last show I did, there's certain things that I will get upset about, but never to the point where I'm screaming at the producer. But there's certain things
Yeah.
that need to be done.
Yes.
Overall, though, there's to me it's okay to be a little loose. I'm If I was doing a newscast or a newswheel where you've got to hit everything on time, that's a different story. If you're telling me, all right, you're coming on the air at 7 minutes after the hour, you got to be out at 16. Okay, that's all. That's what I need to know, and I can do that. And in that time that I'm on the thing, maybe something goes wrong. You have to be able to roll with it.
Mhm.
You have to be able to, if something breaks, if news breaks, you have to be able to roll with that. If a guest cancels at the last minute, you got to be able to roll with that. It's it's radio, and it's important, but it's not life-saving important.
Yeah.
So nobody, if I miss a break, nobody's going to die. If Rogers News started a minute later, in the whole scheme of things, at 3 in the morning, who cares?
Hmm.
He still did the news. He just did it at 3:02 a.m. rather than 3 a.m.
Yes.
So, okay, I know people count on it, and I know there's research and sales, blah 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 blah, but they weren't selling overnights, so it didn't matter.
Well, also, I think that's part of the problem too, is that because I've worked in different industries for several years. By the time I got in radio, I'd worked many years elsewhere, and at one point I said to people, I've been to emergency rooms several times and they don't even behave like this. There are people wheeled in with gunshots and they don't freak out. They
Right.
just get to their job. And I think it's because some people have not worked in other situations because I'd go to my other jobs and I'd run past certain behavior I saw and people are like, wow, that'd get somebody fired where I'm working, or how can somebody act like that? And it took me a long time to realize that's not normal, even though I love radio.
Right. Yeah,
It's
again,
not
part of it goes
productive. It's like,
back to it's not productive, and it goes back a long way where program directors and stuff, they were always looking for little things. God forbid there was a second of dead air. That's why I really liked at GN that I ran my own board, because then if I have something in my head, and GN, most of us ran our own boards from Johnny B to not Milt, but Spike and all the we all ran our boards, because then what you're hearing in your head, you're controlling. Like, I know if I'm building up to a joke, the last word, boom, I hit the commercial. I don't have to wait and point and hope that at that minute that my producer is not looking away or answering a call or dealing with some other thing. And that was the biggest adjustment when I went to WTMJ, because their producers also were the board ops, and it
you go
made me a
like
little
this.
made me a little nervous. Yeah. Or then I was like, can I at least hit the spots? Yes. Okay, that's fine. I can hit the spots, so I know, here we go. Um, to It's just a timing thing. And also, if you're working with people who are on the same page as you, which I was lucky to do most of the time, you get it. They're in sync with you, so they can sense when things are coming, and they're also not afraid to tell you, okay, we gotta make this up, we gotta hit this, you gotta do this. There's a communication, and if you're a prima donna and just want to yell at people, now there's a difference. There was one person who I told management I didn't want to work with again, because I worked with them twice. They were late both times. They were not.
That's different. That's
I think
basics.
right, and I think one time they came in drunk, and you know, it was an over. And it's hard to call your boss at 1:50 a.m. and say, "There's nobody here." Is it? Because at that point, if that's the case, I'm going on the air with no. I'm taking calls live. I'm going. I'm doing whatever I got to do to go on the air. But I don't know. I never understood the screaming and yelling at a producer, because the show is teamwork. And
Yeah.
if the team doesn't get along, then it's just not going to work.
Well, I do want to give a shout out to, not that he's listening because he's retired and stuff, but he's probably outside enjoying life. Dave Marcet, he was a news guy at WVBM radio and news radio, and during the pandemic, didn't let a lot of people come in, and I was one of the few
Right.
skeleton crew there. And so I ran his board. Okay, think about the tight clock there. I was running the
Oh
board for
yeah,
that,
that's
but I didn't get much training. My training consisted of this is what you do. You're able to observe somebody on the air for 2 hours. Have a good day. And usually get people running
wow.
the board, especially there, you get like a lot of training. And so
Sure.
it was like a disaster, obviously, the first few times, and then it became smooth, and it was like what you're talking about is the most incredible experience for me because he was in my ear, and then he would say, okay, stop here during this commercial, I'm going to give the time check, I'd like you to continue. And it was symbiotic, and also just he was so
Yeah.
awesome. And he got pissed because of course things get messed up because I wasn't trained properly, but eventually got really smooth to the point where he extended it. He's like, look, just keep doing this, So I did it for several months, and it was like one of my best radio experiences. So thank you, Dave
Nice.
Marcet, wherever you are. I know he's down south enjoying life.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't, I always thought too, there were full-time producers and a lot of part-time producers. And the part-time producers, um, were making no money.
Wait, so you're sort of
It's
breaking up, and I can't really hear you as well.
Oh, I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Um, so it doesn't do any good. Even if it doesn't matter if it's a full-time producer or part-time producer, when somebody's new, they're going to make some mistakes. If you're if you and I was going to say this is for all the young producers, but I don't know if there are any young producers anymore. If there people are going into that, but my only thing was, hey, listen to the show. If you're going to be filling in on the show, have listened to the show before you come and do it.
Yeah.
Just once, just so you see the tone. Or talk to my producer that you're filling in for and ask them what what needs to be done. The best thing when I first started at WGN, the producers all had a book. There was one big book that had each show, the breakdown. So for Brian Noonan, this is what Brian needs, which was almost nothing. This is what we do on the show. These are the bits at this time. And that was great. So if you were like, if at the last minute you had been called to produce the show and you hadn't heard it before, you could at least flip through that and go, oh, okay, all right, I get it. And then I always, it's like, just ask them. I'm not your boss. You're working on my show, so you're part of this. It's my name, but you're part of this. You're making this happen. So you gotta be ready.
And also now, just to so I can explain to people, your video, it reminds me of, you know how you see dubbed movies or you see movies that weren't set up, like you know how you do
Oh,
the
really?
clap thing and your
Yeah.
words are not matching up with your sound as well. I'm just letting people know, yes, I do acknowledge that. So I don't
Okay.
know.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Apologies. I don't
No,
know.
it's okay.
Technology. I'm all, I got all my bars.
Yeah.
I'm running good
Yeah.
stuff. I don't know.
No, I think it's also because I'm down around here downtown. The connection's very good, but maybe there's some buffering issue over there. I just want to let people know that I do acknowledge what's going on. So, also another thing about the radio business is there just isn't that much money or opportunity, and it can be. I know in Milwaukee, I was talking to somebody, and they said it's minimum wage, and minimum wage doesn't e is not even the minimum wage like what we get here in Chicago. So I don't know how people survive on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, thankfully, I didn't make minimum wage. I didn't, I wasn't driving a new Lambo, but
Right.
so I don't know about that. I don't know how anybody. I don't care what industry you're in. I don't know how anybody survives on minimum wage anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that, you were mentioning about comedians, and what do you think about the proliferation of comedian podcasts since you and I talked last time several years ago at WGN Radio?
I'm amazed by how many podcasts there are. I don't know. I still don't know how people set themselves apart. I have a good friend of mine who was one of the original guys who people were subscribing to. It was like Ricky Gervais, Mark Maron, my buddy Jimmy Pardo on Never Not Funny. Um, he's been doing it forever, and he was able to monetize it early before everybody got podcasts. Um, I you know I have no issue with anybody who wants to have a podcast, have a podcast. If you think
Mhm.
you got something to say, have something to say.
Yeah.
But again, look at the other podcasts. Do you want to be I think what sets crafty brewers apart and why things I think will progress is it looks better and it sounds better. It's not, you know, two people on a screen. And I did those two people on a screen. I did
We're
one of
doing it
those.
now.
We're doing it right now, and there's nothing wrong with that. Also, we found like, and Jimmy told me this. Jimmy Park, he said the reason your podcast is probably going to work better is because it's more niche, or do you say niche?
Yes.
But it's because there's a million comedy podcasts. Every comic has a podcast, and I'm sure a lot of them are good. I'm sure some of them are awful, but how do you set yourself apart? And we're battling against celebrities doing podcasts now. Where's everything? It's a great opportunity for people to get their thoughts out if they have them, and if they want to get them out. It's incredibly difficult unless you have an established name already to break into stuff and generate an audience. And we're seeing our audience increase um, little by little. So it's all moving in the right direction, but it's difficult to do that. And but yeah, to get back to your point, I this sound I don't I still listen to terrestrial radio and I still listen to satellite radio. There's a few podcasts I listen to. It's there's so much stuff because I don't like to use the word content, but there's so much content that I only have a certain amount of time
Mm.
in the day, just like everybody else. And it's like, oh, have you heard Bill Burr's podcast? And I'm like, yes, I have it. It's really funny. Do I listen to it all the time? No. Do I listen to my friends' podcasts all the time? No. Do they listen to mine? Probably not. Um, just because when do you have time to do all that? So listen, it's like I used to say about stand up. If you want to do a podcast, do a podcast. If you want to try stand up, try stand up. Just do it to realize, oh, it's not as easy as some people make it look.
But what about the money part? Because of course, as opposed to when we were growing up, only certain people protected the gates of content, and now the
Right.
gates are gone. So what if people can't make money from what they're doing?
If they can make money from what
If
they're
they
doing,
cannot, like,
if
or
they
whether they
cannot,
can or can't, should they still
well,
create content?
sure, why not? Why not? I mean, we did realities may vary because we wanted to, and we're doing crafty brewers because we want to. It's a passion project. We love talking to brewers. So, we're getting to the point where there may be opportunities for us to monetize, which would be great. Um, and that's fine. But if you're doing something, it's like for years people collected stamps. People went bird watching, they gardened, whatever they wanted to do. They weren't making any money from it. And were there professional people who were making some money? Sure. Um, I'm still amazed with the amount of money some quote unquote influencers can make. And again, that's not throwing shade. It's just an old man going, how are you doing this? And trying to figure that out so I can get a little taste. But if you love something, you do it for free. And if that's how, if you're a podcast, if you're a knitter and you want to do a knitting podcast, and you may never make a dime off that knitting podcast, but you're having fun, and a few people listen, and a couple people email you and say, "Hey, I thank you, I learned something from that." Good, God bless you. Go do something. Um, and if we never, oh, man, I hope this isn't the case. If we never make a dime from this, we still get invited to like beer fests. We still get to talk to really cool people. We do all kinds of stuff. If I never get back on the radio, uh, I got to do incredible stuff. Just in the last year, I got to go to both national conventions. I got to broadcast from the booth at uh, AmFam Field for a Brewers opening day. At GN, I got to meet legendary broadcasters and hobnob with them like we were equals, even though we were not. But so whatever you're doing, whether you're making money at it or not, if you're passionate about it, you should keep doing it.
Yeah, 'cause I was gonna say when you were talking about, you did comedy full time and then now you're doing comedy and you said it feels different from when you did it full time. Would that be an example? Like right now it's just like free of certain concerns, or
Yeah,
what is it?
yeah. Right now, it's because I really want to do it, and it feeds something that I've missed, and it allows me a a place to be completely free. Like, and that has made me better than when I was like, I have to make sure the shows go okay so I get booked back so I can move up from opener to feature to headliner, and I've got to make sure my calendar is full, and I'm dating myself now. I have to fax my avails, I have to do all this, I have to do all that. Now I can send a couple emails to friends of mine who I know book things here and there. I go, "Hey, if you got something, let me know." And they'll go, "Okay, what about this?" Perfect, thank you. It's not about the money anymore. I mean, I don't do it for free, but it's not, I don't need to pay my bills that way. Any money I make is a nice little extra. So I don't have that pressure. And yeah, it's now I do it. Now I do it because I love it again. And, you know, people they give me a little money when I do it. So that's nice. But, you know, um, that's how I feel about it.
Do you think that podcasting is also video, or what do you think podcasting is at this point?
I think podcasting is both. Being an audio guy, I and you know the fact that podcasting originated as an audio platform, um, to me, the audio is always the most important. Because if you have a beautiful picture and you don't have anything to say, you might as well go to a museum. So you have to have the audio to it's symbiotic. The video enhances the audio, but without the audio, the video is, Charlie Chaplin, silent movie without the laughs. So you've got to have them both. So I think now, and it's proven out. This is nothing. I'm not breaking any news to people who do it. You got to have the video aspect if you want your podcast to really take off.
Hmm. Why is
And
that?
just because of the rise of YouTube and TikTok and everything else, where people are consuming content is video based. So you have to have the video aspect. You have to have the video that looks good and catches people's attention, but it then has to have that audio component where what you're saying or what you're doing is grabbing people's attention. And we've found that success with our TikTok stuff, where just in the very short, we've only been doing TikTok probably 2 months for Crafty Brewers. And the amount of views that our stuff is getting is great. We're still trying to figure out, okay, how much has that fed into our YouTube stream, but the subscriptions are going up and views are going up, and people are staying the whole time, which
Hmm.
is good. So they to answer your question, podcasts are both. Podcasts are an audio and video platform. They are nowadays, I think people want to see what they're listening to. So you have to have that audio. But even if you're like, I see guys, I'm jealous of some people's setups, their studios and stuff. It's like, wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
But we're going into breweries, so every
it's
every episode
amazing.
looks different.
Yeah.
And that's what, that and the editing and the sound effects in the trailer. But the fact that every episode looks different, that grabs people's attention. And then what the interview subject is saying keeps them there. So you've got to have both.
Yeah. Yeah, I have another question about something you said earlier because this is what fascinates me about people who perform. See, for my situation, I know I was obsessed with this for years. Maybe I've let go, but um, I've noticed that it is very hard to be who I am. Like, if I totally want to be myself, then it works against me. And
Right.
then I notice that there are people who perform, and when they're not performing, they're like awkward or whatever. And then when they're performing, they're like this, they're full on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if somebody is able to do that in front of people, then why can't they do that in life, in everyday life?
It goes back to, and boy, I can't believe we're bringing up insecurity again. There's a difference. Like on when you're on the air or when you're on stage, your job is to hold people's attention. So, excuse me. This is me. Like me talking to you now is really me. But am I bringing up my energy a little bit because we're doing a podcast? Yeah. Normally if I was sitting here on the computer, I'd be slunched over and I wouldn't be saying much. But that doesn't, boy, nobody wants to see that. So, am I being fake? No, I'm realizing that I need to project my personality. I need to make sure that people, you know, people are like, oh, he seems interested in what he's doing now. I put on a shirt with a collar. I'd be sitting here in shorts and a ratty t-shirt, because that's how I normally am. But when I'm going on stage, I dress nice. When I'm on the radio, That was the big, that was the hardest part. At TMJ, we streamed all the shows on YouTube as well. So now I'm like, oh my God, I have to think about what I'm wearing to be on radio. That's not why I got into radio. I got into radio so I could sit in a room wearing whatever I want and nobody cared. Um, so you know, the performative nature of anybody is whether you're projecting your own personality or you're putting on a character, it's to draw people in and ex- exaggerating. Like, for example, did what happened to me on the drive in today anger me that much? No, it angered me a little, but a little is boring on the when I'm telling a story. I've got to be, I've got to take that minor inconvenience. I've got to make it bigger for comedic things. So the the reality is what happened. The performance part is taking that little thing that happened and making it a little bit bigger. Also to play into, people to go, seriously, you're that upset about this? Go, no, obviously I'm not, but it's so that's where the putting it on. And then when you're like when I'm not uh, either on the air or on stage or something, I don't like even when you asked me to do this, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be a good guest. It's so, but that's the thing. And that wasn't like fake humility. It's always, I'm like when I'm on stage or when I'm on the air, I really believe that people want to hear exactly what I'm saying. When I walk out of here today, I don't even think my wife wants to hear what I'm going to be saying. So it's a whole different thing.
Okay.
It's two different worlds. And I know that's hard to understand, it's hard to explain, but I know I'm not the only person to feel that way. I've worked with comics who are so funny. And then we would go back to the place we're staying and they're just misanthropes. They just sit and they either work on their act or they get high or they just sit quietly and watch TV, whatever. But it's like there's two people and they're the same person, but it's different sides of that person.
Hmm. Yeah, because I've noticed, like I've said this before, even in my blog, I've had to fake introversion for so long. Now I'm teaching more, so I don't have to do as much, but it's really a struggle. And I thought, gosh, all these people who are paid to perform or all these introverts who are going out there like, yeah, I've got a book tour. I'm like, I wish I had a book tour. I mean, can I be your proxy? I'll speak for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, how about it? Now,
Yeah.
if you overcome it, that's the thing. I mean, people still, oh, don't you get nervous when you go on stage? It's a, there's still, it's not nerves like, oh my God, I don't want to go out and talk. It's always like, oh, I want to do well. So it's not nervous. It's concerned. It's wanting to do the best that you can do and put aside that fear. And whether it's doing a podcast, whether it's doing whatever, fear holds people back more than anything else. Because you might have a lot to say, but if you don't let anybody hear it, we don't know. We don't know what you have to say.
Okay, so speaking of what you have to say, anything else you want to say?
No, I am honestly, I don't have to talk now for another 3 days. I've said too much. I will one more time give a shameless plug. I will Crafty Brewers Pod at Crafty Brewers Podcast. You can go there. It's on YouTube. CraftyBrewersPod.com is our website. You can see all the old episodes. Cody Goff is my great producer, and shout out to him as always. And listen, if you're a radio programmer and you're like, oh, this guy still might have something, yes, but snatch me up now because I'm, who knows where I'm going to be tomorrow. It could all go crazy tomorrow.
Oh yeah, because
But
Scott Childers, I did an interview with him, and then he ended up getting a job. I'm not saying it directly led to it, but it helps with exposure. But oh yeah,
listen, Margaret, if this leads to a gig, I'll give you credit. I'm not, I'm not one of those guys. I did it all by myself. Nobody does anything all by themselves.
it's like
So,
dripping. It's like drips.
yeah, little drip here and there, and as people have called me, a big drip. So that's either way. But listen. I thank you for reaching out and asking me to do this. Hopefully, it's not another 13 years or 15 years when we do it
Well,
again.
I think it's also because you put that thing on LinkedIn like, hey, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna Because you know people put that thing on LinkedIn like, "Hey, if you want to chat," I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna test this now and see if he wants." I'm like,
Yeah,
"Whoa, he
let's.
responded." Okay.
Yeah, no, it's listen. I love. Um, I've been very fortunate, and it took me a long time to get to that mind space where even now, even losing this job at TMJ, I was still fortunate to be there for a long time. I will never forget some of the things that happened to me at WGN, and some of the legends that uh, said things to me that I haven't shared with anybody, but they meant so much to me. And I was like, oh my God. And, being at the station that was on in my house and my parents' car nonstop, nobody can ever take that away. And I do carry those things with me. So yeah, if people want to talk to me, I don't, again, I don't always know why, but if you, I've got enough of an ego to go, okay, yeah, sure. I've got something interesting to say.
Well, also TMJ, I mean, you were let go not because you were bad, it's because they did that
No.
format change, which
Yeah.
isn't, you know.
So, right. And listen, everybody in this industry knows that logic and rational thought don't always play in when you're let go. It's,
But it's
so
still hard.
it's incredibly hard, and we read about it every day in the radio industry. People are getting let go for a variety of reasons, and most of those reasons have nothing to do with their performance. So, so it's tough, but again, it's part of the deal. It's what we signed up for. I had no hard feelings toward anybody, and yeah, just on to the next thing.
Well, I think that some of the best times I had in radio, first I love radio, but some of the best times I had were those years at WGN when you and I crossed over.
Yeah,
I I mean, it was hard, but also it was good because the hard things made me pursue things I was interested in. And that's when I started podcasting. And I found people who were allies. And later on,
yeah,
it became difficult to find such people. So,
yeah. It's any and all businesses are hard. There's nothing. I don't care if you work in radio. I don't care if you work at McDonald's. Work is hard, and sometimes the people you work with are difficult, and things aren't always rosy. That's why they call it work and not vacation. So that's that's part of the gig. That's you know
but
how we.
I know I asked you like for final words, but this is my thing and I'm paying for it. So, but what do you think of Milwaukee? I love Milwaukee. I've been there several times. I go there on
I
vacation.
love I love the city. I think it's a perfect size. I think there's a lot going on there. We just went up last weekend for a Brewers game. Even after I was let go, we still went to a Brewers game. I love Milwaukee, and the more I was up there, and the more people I met, and the more I got involved. Wisconsin politics is wacky, but and Wisconsin itself is a million different things to a million different people. But yeah, I got nothing but love for Milwaukee.
Okay.
It's no Chicago. I still Chicago's still number one.
And I can't believe
But
you and I can't believe you drove up there.
oh yeah. Well, I'm on the northwest side of the city, so in the mornings it'd take about an hour and 20 minutes. It wasn't bad. I used to live in the southwest suburbs and work in the loop, and it took me as long to get to work sometimes. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the way you speak reminds me of people from the Southwest side.
It's
So,
probably. I grew up in the south suburbs. I went to school in the city on the south, well, Roosevelt Road. So, like I said, I'm just a regular guy. So,
but your ancestors probably came from the Southwest side, right? Or the South side?
south side, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
there you go.
Uh,
You
my
still have
my
remnants
mom and
of
dad
it.
were south side, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
why.
well, that's